Once upon a time, in the heart of a lush Igbo village, where the earth hums with ancestral wisdom, colonial rule has cast a shadow. The air is thick with whispers of change as foreign lords occupy the land. Villagers, once free in spirit, are now bound by the weight of unfamiliar customs. This is where our story begins, where faith, betrayal, and tradition collide. Akintoye, born of a Yoruba woman married to an Igbo man, young and sharp, became the chief interpreter for the colonial masters. With a glint in his eye and ambition in his heart, he held the keys to communication between the white men and the people of his village. To them, he was a bridge. To him, a ladder to power. But this power would soon come at a great cost. With his new role, Akintoye twisted his words to the colonial master's favor, using his position to undermine his people. He spoke of their sacred customs as primitive, all while pocketing the rewards of his deceit. The elders, trusting him, could not see the storm he was brewing from within their own mists. He began to manipulate not only words, but the very hearts of the villagers. Akintoye seduced the wives of prominent men, pretending to be the protector of their honor while taking what he wanted. His charm, like the colonial rule, was deceitful, wrapping his people in false promises they couldn't escape. Akintoye's wealth grew as he cunningly bought homes from struggling villagers at distressingly low prices. Under the guise of helping, he stripped them of their ancestral land. The villagers, desperate for survival, had no idea they were selling their future to the very man who betrayed them. The church was a symbol of colonial power, both a refuge and a cage. As Akintoye solidified his place in the community, he grew closer to the church's leaders. He preached their messages of salvation while secretly subverting the village's cultural beliefs. The church had become a tool of oppression, and Akintoye, its willing servant. The village elders had seen Akintoye's true nature, but their warnings fell on deaf ears. They sensed a deep betrayal growing like a poison in their midst, but Akintoye's charm had dulled their resolve. The faith they once placed in him turned to fear, yet they remained silent, waiting for the right moment to act. Atunma, the masquerade, a secret society of powerful spiritual figures, had long watched over the village. Cloaked in mystery, their identities hidden beneath sacred masks, they embodied the ancient ways. They knew that the village was at a breaking point, and Akintoye was the thorn that needed to be removed. One night, as the full moon cast an ethereal glow over the village, the masquerade acted. They held a gathering, calling the elders and trusted villagers to witness the truth about Akintoye. The power of the past, the spirits of their ancestors, would finally be unleashed to reveal the truth that lay buried beneath Akintoye's betrayal. With the power of ancestral spirits, the masquerade revealed Akintoye's betrayals to the village, the men he had wronged, the women he had seduced, and the homes he had stolen. All were exposed in a blaze of truth. The villagers watched in horror as the man they had once trusted stood naked in his deception. The revelation shattered the faith of the village. The church, once a symbol of hope, became a hollow building, devoid of the spirit of the people. The villagers looked at the once sacred structure with disdain. It had become a monument to their suffering, a place where their souls were sold rather than saved. The villagers, once subjugated by the false promises of salvation, began to reject both Akintoye and the colonial system. They turned away from the church and began to reconnect with their roots, calling back the traditions that had been suppressed. It was time to heal, to reclaim what had been stolen. Akintoye wandered the village, now an outcast. He had no friends, no allies. His wealth and power had vanished with the exposure of his deeds. But somewhere deep inside, a flicker of remorse began to grow. Was there still time for redemption? Could he undo the damage he had caused? The elders met in council. Akintoye's mother is an Igbo woman. Tradition forbids the Igbo to chash out a child of their own Nwadiana. They debated how to restore balance to their village. The betrayal had run deep, but so had the spirit of their people. They knew that to heal, they must reconnect with their ancestors and embrace the power of their traditions once more. The masquerade would guide them. The villagers began the long process of healing. They reclaimed their sacred spaces, restoring shrines and honoring their ancestors, Agbala. The gods accepted his plea. The masquerade led them in rites of purification, bringing balance back to a community torn apart by greed and deceit. Slowly, trust was rebuilt, but it would never be the same. Alone, Akintoye sat by the edge of the river, staring at his reflection in the still waters. His once confident demeanor was replaced with doubt. The village had turned its back on him, and now he was left with only the echoes of his mistakes. Could he ever regain his soul? Or was he forever lost to his own ambition? As time passed, Akintoye's isolation brought him closer to the people he once betrayed. He began visiting the village elders, not for power, but for forgiveness. His words were no longer those of manipulation, but those of humility. The villagers, wary but not unforgiving, listened to his remorse with guarded hearts. The once grand colonial church now stood in ruins. The villagers had abandoned it, and it had no place in their rebirth. It became a silent monument to their oppression. The villagers gathered instead around sacred trees and open fields, where the spirits of their ancestors could listen to their prayers. In a final act of reconciliation, the elders invited Akintoye to join them in a sacred ceremony, one that would invite the spirits of their ancestors to return to the village. Akintoye, though hesitant, accepted. The village watched as the past and present intertwined, and the power of the old ways surged through the land once more. During the ceremony, the spirits tested Akintoye's heart. The gods demanded proof of his sincerity, not just in words, but in action. Akintoye was asked to perform a task for the village, a labor of love, to restore what he had stolen. Only through this could he prove he was worthy of forgiveness. Akintoye took on the hardest task of all, restoring the homes he had once stolen. It was no easy feat, as the villagers watched his every move, but Akintoye worked tirelessly, repairing roofs, rebuilding walls, and offering his strength. Slowly, he earned back their trust not through words, but through actions. As the village flourished, Akintoye began to change. No longer the arrogant man who sought power through manipulation, he had become a humble servant to his people. He understood now that true strength lay not in domination, but in unity. And with this understanding, the village entered a new era, one of self-reliance and prosperity. The masquerade, whose silent protection had saved the village, now bestowed their blessing upon Akintoye. They masked him in a sacred cloak, symbolizing his redemption and the forgiveness granted to him. The villagers gathered to witness the ritual, a symbol of rebirth and unity between the old ways and the new. The village returned to its roots, rekindling its spiritual practices with renewed vigor. The elders taught the younger generation the ways of the ancestors, and the songs of the old gods were sung once more. The church, a symbol of oppression, was left behind, replaced by the sacred rituals that had always been the true heart of the village. As the village continued to thrive, Akinci faced one final test. He was asked to lead a major spiritual ceremony in the absence of the elders. This would prove that he had truly learned the ways of his people. The ceremony was his ultimate chance to show that he had become one of them heart and soul. No longer a place of foreign control, the church was reborn as a symbol of the village's strength. The elders reconsecrated the church, not with the rituals of the colonial church, but with the blessings of their ancestors. It became a place of reflection, not oppression, where the village could come together in unity. Akinci, once the betrayer, now stood as a pillar of the community. His leadership was no longer based on manipulation, but on respect. He became the bridge between the old ways and the modern world, guiding the village with wisdom and humility, ensuring that the lessons of the past were never forgotten. With Akinci's transformation complete, the village found peace. There were no more divisions, no more betrayals. The spirit of unity, forged through struggle and redemption, now guided them forward. The shadows of the past were finally behind them, and the future was bright with hope. The younger generation, born into freedom, grew up under the lessons of their elders and the strength of their ancestors. They carried the values of unity, respect, and honor. They were the future rooted in the past, but forward-thinking. The legacy of Akinci's redemption would be passed down, a story of transformation for generations to come. As the sun set over the village, Akinci stood alone by the river once more. This time his reflection showed a man at peace with himself. He had made mistakes, but through humility and hard work, he had earned forgiveness. His journey was complete, but the village's journey was just beginning. The final blessing came in the form of the ancestors themselves. The spirits appeared in the village one last time, smiling down upon the people. The village had truly reclaimed its soul, free from the chains of colonialism. With the ancestors' blessing, they were ready to move forward in strength and unity. The colonial powers had long since faded into history, but the scars they left behind remained. The village, though battered, had emerged stronger. The foreign gods and systems were gone, replaced by the enduring spirit of the Igbo people. The past was a lesson, and the future was in their hands. Akintoye's story, one of betrayal, redemption, and growth, became a legend in the village. His name, once whispered in shame, was now spoken with reverence. His journey had taught the village that no one was beyond redemption, and that even in the darkest moments, there was always a path to light. As the first light of dawn broke over the village, the future looked bright. The people had reclaimed their faith, their traditions, and their unity. Together, they had triumphed over adversity, and as they moved forward, they knew they would never forget the lessons of the past, for it was their strength, their heart, and their soul that would guide them forevermore. Ready for a journey through the heart of Africa? Dive into captivating African folktales, told through rich voiceover narration. Subscribe now to explore timeless stories, wisdom, and adventure. Don't miss out. Hit that bell to stay updated. Story by Eliton Okoye.